The former global chairman of Toyota Corporation, Hiroshi Okuda, had a famous saying. He said, "Reform business when business is good." And there is so much wisdom in that statement. You know, for any leader, for any organization, the time to break your business model is when it's not broken. In other words, while times are good, that is the time to reinvent yourself. The term or the phrase I often use with clients and audience members is this: you need to dig the well before you get thirsty. In other words, you need to reinvent yourself before change leaves you with no other option to. Because the challenge is if you wait until change hits, you find yourself in survival mode, not strategic mode. And there are some great examples of brands and businesses that reinvented themselves and stayed one step ahead of change and disruption as a result of that. The first example that I love is the example of Corning. Now, Corning have been around since the 1850s. And at the turn of last century, the vast bulk of Corning's revenue came from the manufacture of glass light globes. Now, they realized, though, that even though they were making a lot of money from constructing glass light globes, that was a market that was becoming commoditized. New competitors were entering the space, and so Corning realized they couldn't get stuck. And so before their hand was forced, even while they were still making a lot of money from light globes, they reinvented themselves and began to focus on other product lines like the cook and kitchenware market. Most of us have Corningware right now in our cupboards, in the kitchen, and yet even though we think of Corning as that today, the reality is today their focus has moved on again. They've again reinvented themselves, and the focus for them is the medical device space, amongst other very niche, cutting-edge, innovative areas. So Corning are a brilliant example of a company that's never gotten stuck. They saw change coming, and before disruption hit, they reinvented themselves. They broke their business model before it was broken by change. Another great example is the example of Schneider Electric. Now, Schneider Electric are one of the world's largest organizations when it comes to electrical infrastructure and circuit boards. What's interesting is they started their life as a constructor of cannonballs. They made cannonballs from the 1830s onwards, and while that was an area they were making good money from, they realized they need to continually adapt and reinvent themselves, and so they used their skills in working with metal to then construct steam trains. And they made a lot of money out of constructing steam trains, but as time went on and innovation started to play out, they realized they couldn't get stuck in steam trains, and so they started making electrical engines for locomotives. In fact, they were one of the leaders in that area when electrical trains first came onto the market. Now, as the years unfolded, they realized again they couldn't get stuck in that one area, and Schneider Electric then broadened their scope into other areas of the supply of electrical grids and a supplier of circuit boards to being the company that dominate that market today. And so the challenge for any organization, any leader is this: how do you break your own business model before it gets broken by disruption? How do you dig the well before you get thirsty? And the challenge is, how do you, identify the things that are the cues or the clues as to where you can focus in the years to come? I mean, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. You need to build on a foundation you've already got as you look to reinvent yourself into what you could become. 3 questions that may help guide this discussion within your organizational leadership team or even for you personally. First question is, what do you own? What are the assets at your disposal? And it may not be a physical asset, it may be the fact that you own a brand that is well known or a distribution channel. National Cash Register, NCR, is a good example of this. When electrical cash registers first came in a number of decades ago, they were caught on the hop because they had focused on traditional cash registers, but they realized they had a network that they owned, a distribution network that meant they had power. And they quickly caught up and then went one step ahead and started innovating in the cash register space and used their distribution network as their source of competitive advantage. So what do you own that reflects where you've been that may be a strategic advantage in the years to come? The second question is, what do you know? What are some of the intellectual assets? What are the things that you're aware of, maybe even some unique IP that you can leverage in the years to come in ways that you haven't leveraged in the past? Now, Corning have done this well. Much of the IP they've used in the past for their ranges of products, they're now repurposing in brand new product areas. And the third question is, what do you do? What are some of the things that you've got as an organization, parts of your culture that give you that unfair advantage? Because as you look to break your business model, again, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, leverage your sources of unfair competitive advantage, but make sure you reinvent yourself before disruption leaves you with no other option but to do so.